Dude, I can't believe how fun Ultimate is. Like the way Falcon moves in this game, it's like my hands are. Ow!
Yo, what happened, dude?
Dude, I don't know. Like they're just, it's like seizing up on me. I can't feel my fingers. Well, I do feel, but it's only pain.
Yeah. Why are you not watching out for yourself, dude? What's going on?
What do you mean watching out for myself? I'm playing. Ultimate just dropped.
What? You can't just ditch your body just because Ultimate came out.
I've ditched my body for worse. This is Beyond the Metagame. I'm your host, Peon, this week live from the Caribbean. I'm joined, as always, by wonderful co-host, Abhi. Abhi, how you doing, big boy?
Doing pretty great. These are our second favorite pirates.
Yes.
After the Somalians from that joined Captain Phillips
what?
on his journey.
Oh.
Have you seen that movie?
Never in my life. I thought you were going to say our second favorite pirates behind the co-conspirators of the early Smash League, who are my least favorite pirates. Oh, mostly because I'm jealous that they're playing and I'm not. But that's a whole separate issue.
That is a whole nother can of worms.
We're in the Caribbean, which prompted me to think, hey, we got a lot of new countries listening to our show. And I hesitate because of a certain dilemma that I'll get to shortly. But first, we got Switzerland in the mix. So thank you very much. Switzerland, a great country. They speak 3 different languages, Italian, German, and French. I was there this summer. They have a lot of mountains, and they eat fondue. Also, we got the Philippines. A lot of great stuff from the Philippines. I don't know. What do they do there, Abhi? I don't know. What are the Philippines?
You really got to throw this on me. You're supposed to be the expert on this.
And we got Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, Abhi told me in the pre-show, like, hey man, you should just pretend you already knew this. I don't. Turns out it's a special administrative region. So it isn't a country, nor is it China. So, who knows? You learn something new every day. But regardless of where you're listening from, thank you so much for tuning in. We're just 3 countries closer to complete world domination, Abhi. How do you feel about that?
I feel pretty great. And it's funny you didn't ask me what I knew about Hong Kong, because I actually know stuff about Hong Kong. But yeah. It's a great place. You should definitely visit.
Awesome. You have family there?
Yes, I do have family there. My dad happens to live there.
All right. Well, shout out to Mr. Vaidyanatha. I don't know how to say it. How do you say your last name?
Vaidyanatha. I say it every week.
I feel like just to do some quick housekeeping, we are still doing our Super Smash Bros. Ultimate giveaway. And there's a bunch of different ways to enter. Check it out. It'll be in the show notes and on Twitter. I feel like one of the different requirements to enter, Abhi, is just like a correct pronunciation of your last name. I'd be down for that.
It should be. Just record an audio clip.
But I want to introduce this week's topic. You probably can't already tell by the title, but this week we're joined by a doctor. Yeah, Dr. Cait McGee. You might have known her from different Smash events. You know, she was featured in Summit. A lot of the top players were showcasing her on their Twitters and stuff like that. You know, I think she kind of made a splash onto the scene. You know, she kind of became like a part of the public sphere, and we reached out to her to talk to her about health and how how to take care of our bodies and everything. You know, this show we talk about the mental side of things, but today we're talking about the physical side of things and how the two connect.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the coolest things is talking about appreciating our bodies. As someone that takes a lot of care of every aspect of my being, like being being self-aware.
Whoa, too much information. Every aspect.
It's true, but I think that being aware of like everything that we're feeling, all the signs that our body tells us that we're either basically hungry or tired or hurt in different ways, it is super important. And we always emphasize being mindful. Being mindful is one of the most important things that we tell you about on this show. And Dr. Cait kind of takes this to a whole new level, which is really cool. And she kind of talks about how to really become one with your body and understand how to treat the things that it's telling you to treat.
She's so insane. Listen to her talk about this stuff. She's such an expert, and it's really clear she's a doctor. Like not to talk smack, to either yourself or I, Abhi. Again, that's not even correct grammar. I'm overthinking everything. You and I. She's so intelligent, and we've had some very intelligent people on the show, and I still wasn't prepared for her. The way she could articulate and the way that she could talk about all this stuff. So it was really cool. We have quite the interview in store for you guys, and I hope that you get the most out of it.
Yeah, definitely. All of that and more after this break.
Welcome back to Beyond the Metagame. This week, AV and I are joined by the illustrious Dr. Cait McGee. Cait, thank you so much for joining us.
I don't think I've ever been introduced as illustrious before. That's a first time. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so you probably, if you're a Smasher, you've probably seen Cait at TwitchCon, Super Smash Con, Beyond the Summit. You were there for the Dota one as well, right?
I was. I've also been at Genesis and Pound Series.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, actually, I walked past, you had a booth at Genesis, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, okay. Yeah, I think I might have actually talked to you for like 10 seconds last year, but that's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah, that was me and my coworker, Matt, who is also a physical therapist. He's the one who founded 1HP, which is kind of where both of us do our esports work out.
Yeah, would you mind, just to start it off, tell us a little bit why, you're so qualified to talk about physical therapy, injury prevention, and what you and the organization 1HP, aim to accomplish.
Sure. So there's kind of two parts to this. One part is that my background is physical therapy. I have an undergraduate degree in exercise and sports science and neuroscience. I have a doctorate of physical therapy with an additional master's in clinical anatomy and health sciences. And so that's kind of the physical part of things. But the esports kind of things is a little bit more of an interesting story. I started playing games during my clinical rotations in grad school as a way to cope with simultaneously taking clinical courses and studying for the board licensing exam, which is great, and it's also probably best for my grades that I didn't discover how much I loved gaming sooner.
Yeah.
But as I was discovering how much I loved gaming, I was also discovering how many of my friends were getting injured. And I think the final straw was when they told me that I could either stop complaining about terrible ergonomics at tournaments or I could do something about it. And I decided doing something about it sounded more like something I was interested in. So I got started kind of using that knowledge that I have from physical therapy, clinical anatomy, and exercise science to kind of first help with just ergonomics, and then to help with kind of activities outside of gaming that might contribute to your ability to game better. And then, incorporating things like taking breaks and kind of using the research that we know and have available to us. So it's been a really great integration of kind of what I went to school for, what I studied, what I love to do as a career, and then a community that I really enjoy being a part of, and a whole bunch of games that I really enjoy playing.
That's so awesome that you, like, so late in your own development got into gaming, because I feel like it's one of those things that you either grow up with or you never really get into. Perhaps that's ignorance on my part. I have to ask, was there what was the game that got you hooked?
There's actually two games at the same time that got me hooked. So one of them was unsurprisingly an MMO. If you're going to get addicted to gaming, you have to start with an MMO, don't you?
Of course.
I discovered Guild Wars 2.
No way!
I still play it. I'm a member of the oldest guild in the game, Zealots of Shiver Peak. They're a really great group. They're really fun to play with. It's an absolutely fantastically fun game. The visuals are amazing. You know, it's well designed. And then kind of once you hit level 80, your development is only it's more horizontal than it is vertical. Like you don't become better than other players once you've hit level 80. You kind of you can take on cool new things and like, you know, specialize in certain other things. But it's unlike WoW, it's a little easier to put down and pick back up again. Which I think is healthy for me at least.
Right.
The other game that got me hooked was I was staying with a friend to interview while I was crashing on his couch to interview for a job, and he was doing statistics on EG versus Secret being played on Perfect World servers in China in Dota 2. And he was complaining the whole time about how difficult it is to push stats through the Perfect World, through the Great Firewall, because half the time they don't actually go through, and sometimes they show up 20 minutes later, and sometimes they show up 3 times, which is a little bit of a difficulty.
Wait, pushing stats through a firewall? What is that?
So in Dota, they have these little pop-up boxes that you can pop up during the game if you're logged in as a caster, basically.
Yeah.
And so you can, you type out the stat, you give it a header, you fill in the statistical information, and then you send it. And this is not something like just any viewer can do. You have to be on part of the broadcast team to do it, which my friend was, and I later did something similar. But the difficulty of getting it to actually show up on the streams was that it's being streamed out of China, and if you're based in the US, it has to go through China's firewall.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I've watched a little bit of Dota. I was more of a League of Legends player myself, but
I'll forgive you for that.
Yeah, I'll take that out. But I think that it's really obvious, but health is kind of the baseline of your gameplay. You can't perform at your best without having a healthy body, and I'm sure you've been able to kind of evangelize this in esports. But the problem is that this is not often a juicy topic. As much as we want Beyond the Metagames listeners to be at their top shape, how do we really get people to care about physical therapy and injury prevention?
I think part of one of the best ways that I've really gotten people to invest kind of in the idea even of physical therapy being part of gaming or self-management activities being part of gaming is that I'll often start out with something simple like massage. At tournaments, I don't really have an opportunity to do a deep dive into evaluation and treatment of a patient's injuries. I'm going to have minimal chance to follow up with them, minimal chance to make sure that they're doing all the exercises I wanted them to do for long-term improvement. What I can do is in that moment, I can use therapeutic massage or joint mobilizations or venom manipulation to improve their pain and to make them feel better and then to subsequently play better because they're not distracted by their pain. And that's kind of like the initial investment that I need from them. They recognize this person knows what they're talking about. They made me not hurt. And so maybe these other things that they're telling me are also going to make me not hurt more. So that's kind of, that's one of the initial ways. I'm very lucky to come into gaming at a time when especially in esports, people were really realizing the degree to which their health really influenced their ability to play, especially when you've got players like Fear in Dota 2, when you've got hacks in Smash,
Right.
there's very, very visible players dealing with injuries that are chronic and debilitating and really significantly affect their ability to compete. So I was able to kind of tap into some of that understanding and that recognition of I don't have to wait till I get to this point to start addressing the issues I'm having.
Right. And I think the most interesting part about it is that it wasn't always like this. Like you said, we're kind of in an era where we are experiencing where it's like very normal to have like esports therapists and psychologists and all of this stuff and all these people that are encouraging self-care. But the interesting part is that like esports like basically comes from something that's supposed to be a very leisurely activity. But we're starting to get a lot of the sports infrastructure, which is really interesting. So how do you think that like we normalize self-care in an environment that doesn't promote it or coach it. I know that it's really I know that it's like there's this initial cost that you can have in terms of going to tournaments and like and giving people and giving people therapy and massages. But let's just say someone like me wanted to go out and encourage self-care in our tournament environments. How do we like basically normalize this?
Sure. So there's kind of two facets that I go after physical therapy, I guess integration, and one is the competitive esports scene, and that one's a little bit easier in some senses to get people to invest in because everybody wants to be better. They want to find that magic thing that's going to bring their performance to the next level, and so it's pretty easy to kind of demonstrate how physical therapy can be a part of that. A lot of times it's kind of the more casual, the more, I'm less worried about my tournament results and more worried about, I just want to play because I love this. I want to stream this for an audience. That it takes a little bit of a different approach to reach people. And I think that might be a little bit more of what you're interested in here. In that regard, it's about that investment really, it requires a degree of self-awareness from people to recognize when they do or don't have pain, to recognize what their body is telling them. So then the first thing that I really emphasize is listening to your body. You can't really tell what you need to do until you know what's actually going on. So
Yeah.
Pretty easy example. People want to put hot packs on everything that hurts. If it hurts, I want to stick a hot pack on it. And don't get me wrong, heat feels great. But sometimes that heat can make your injury worse. If your injury is because you have lots of swelling, if you've put, you've been resting your elbow on your armrest oddly, or your wrist is resting across the corner of your desk, and that compression is irritating tissues, and you've got swelling and inflammation in there, putting heat on it brings more fluid to the area. It makes it more swollen. So it might feel nice while you have the heat on, but it's not going to fix your problem. In that case, you'd want to use ice. Ice reduces inflammation. And so kind of starting out with simple and easily integratable things like use ice instead of heat for this particular injury, or providing something that's really easy to build into your schedule. People recognize that if they play too many games in a row, they start getting tilted. So they're like, okay, I need to take a break after this many games, or else my brain's going to explode. Well, while we're taking a break, why not incorporate this movement thing? You're not doing anything else anyway. You might as well do some moving. And then people start to find, oh, you know what? I do feel a bit better. I'm not having that random ache or pain. I'm feeling less kind of clouded mentally. I'm feeling more relaxed, more at ease. And yes, that will result in better performance, but it also mean you enjoy it more. Like you don't get that same degree of frustration. You get, less pain to deal with. You get, less kind of just a mental buildup going on.
Right. Well, that's actually just to go off that. I mean, you talked about heat and its ineffectiveness in the context you provided. When is heat applicable? When should you put hot stuff on something?
So heat is great for muscle tension. So if you have knots, if you have really tight muscles, heat is definitely the way to go there. And so that's a situation where you want to use heat for up to about 12 to 15 minutes. What it does is it increases kind of really surface and local blood flow, which is it's helpful for kind of clearing certain factors out. It's helpful for providing increased oxygen to the muscle itself. But I will say that, if you're using heat on a muscle, you're not going to get a long-term result or, a long-term lasting change unless you're also incorporating some degree of exercise or posture change. Because if all you ever do is treat the symptom and not the underlying problem, it's going to keep on coming back. But absolutely, if you're having muscle tension pain, using heat for 12 to 15 minutes is definitely appropriate. And if you're having swelling-related pain, using ice for up to 20 minutes at a time is equally appropriate.
That's good to know. I'll definitely, because I'm guilty of that, Cait. I'm going to be honest with you. I love jumping in the hot tub when I'm sore. I love putting hot cloths on everything, legs, stuff like that. It just feels nice. You're right, but Okay.
It does.
But I want to take a step back. I mean, AV briefly mentioned this, talking about the distinction between kind of traditional sports and esports. You know, if you walk past a playground, you know, there's a 5-year-old kicking around a soccer ball, but before he even touches the ball, he's touching his toes, he's doing leg kicks, he's squatting. You know what I mean? He's preparing. I mean, we in this youth sports programs across America and surely the world, you know, over the years we've placed so much emphasis on injury prevention and, you know, warm ups and you know, self care. But esports. I mean, to become a competitive esport player, generally you were a very talented person who got really good at whatever their leisure activity was. You know, people for the most part didn't get into esports because they wanted to participate in esports. They just liked games and they just happened to be really, really good at them. So how, you know, as a gaming community, do we kind of nip it in the bud? You know, get people to care about these long-term serious things when they're just relaxing. You know, when they're creating those habits before they ever become esports competitors.
So one of the ways that we start to do that is actually when kids are starting to get into gaming young, we make this a normal part of gaming behavior. One of the places that I've worked with around here near me is a place called the Game Gym. It's just north of DC. They do a whole lot of camps for kids, kind of like the same way you'd have an intramural traditional sports league. They have intramural esports. And one of the things that we did was, you know, we went over kind of a basic warm up, some break things you can do, and then a cool down routine. And so that's something that they just do when they're gaming. So making it an early habit is definitely helpful. I think also making it a part of just regular tournament behavior that, you know, you finish your set, you do some stretches. That's an easy way to do it. Finding the more convenient ways to incorporate it is what's more likely to make those kind of behaviors stay. I mean, yes, it'll take time, and when it becomes a habit, it'll definitely stick around. But in order to get it to the point of a habit, you need to make it inconvenient. You need to make it fit. You need to make it not inconvenient. Sorry, you need to make it fit into people's schedules in a way that, you know, doesn't feel like a burden, doesn't feel like a heavy amount of work. So, you know, things like setting alarms on your phone, or, you know, setting a particular number of games you're going to play before you stretch, or, you know, even things like having posters of stretches you can do at the tables for, you know, for your pools. There are a lot of really easy ways to kind of introduce it into the environment. And I think if people see, you know, top players and kind of engaging in these healthy behaviors and playing well, that's one way to get after, you know, the competitive esports crowd. And then if people see, you know, their favorite streamers engaging in these kind of healthy behaviors and, you know, not complaining about pain, or, you know, saying, you know, that they're not tilting so much anymore, then that's kind of a positive reinforcement. It's a really good validation from somebody that they already respect and tend to listen to.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because we actually have a friend that is going through something very similar. He has hurt his hand multiple times over playing Smash Brothers, extremely talented Smash Brothers player. And he's kind of had to take multiple breaks because he keeps like playing way too much. And you'd think that that his peers and people around him, literally everyone telling him to basically take care of his hands a little more, that he would change these habits. And like, is it just a thing that we have to figure it out on our own once we hit like once we hit a point that we're just hurting so much? And for us, like as friends, how do we not sound condescending? Because I can empathize that, like, probably the way that he's feeling is that we're kind of just all kind of telling him to do something that sounds really obvious, so it probably seems pretty patronizing. So how do we encourage this behavior in friend groups and communities?
That's a really good question with a whole bunch of parts to answer. So one of them is I'm gonna start with the concept of the heat meter. The heat meter is a concept that Matt and I use with 1HP. It's the idea of say you're in a game, you have a weapon, the weapon has an overheat meter. You use too many charges, it's going to need a cooldown period before you can start using it again. Your body is kind of the same way, except your overheat is injury. So over time, as you're playing, you're building up more and more heat in your meter. If you don't do anything to stop it, you will hit a point of injury, and then you have to cool down, recover from your injury completely before you can really start playing again. There's a lot you can do to improve your meter. You can do exercise outside of gaming that decreases the rate at which you build heat because your muscles have more endurance. You can take breaks, which does mini cooldown of your heat meter while you're playing. You can do warm-ups and cooldowns, which start you at a lower point on the heat meter.
That's a
and
cool
so
concept.
Kind of using that analogy of the heat meter, if you can recognize, my overheat point is X number of sets, or X amount of time, practicing tech skills on Fox, or, X amount of time, grinding out this particular raid. If you can recognize that, then you can say, okay, I'm going to go below that. I'm not going to play for that. If you notice your pain starts at an hour on the dot, you don't go for the full hour. You go for 50 minutes. Then you take a 2 to 5 minute break, and then you play another 50 minutes. You're able to get more time out of your body if you give it those mini cooldowns. But you're right, to some degree, this is the kind of thing that a lot of people can only recognize when it gets so bad that they can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
And to some extent, that's, a consequence of this is a leisure activity. I should be enjoying it. I'm going to, kind of deny that it's causing me a problem. To some extent, it's, a feeling that, while this is normal, I should expect to feel this way. It's an indicator of how hard I'm working to get better. No pain, no gain. The PT version of that is no pain, no pain. Just don't hurt, you idiots. But you're right. When it comes to your own friend groups, it's a little bit harder to be speaking, about something they should be doing when you're trying to speak from a position of equality. They're your friends, they're your community members. You're not trying to set yourself over them. So a really easy way to kind of help with that is to demonstrate the good behaviors. If you guys are scrimming together, take a break after 3 sets. Say, okay, I need distraction now. Why don't you distract with me? Or be a little less obvious perhaps, but you modeling those good behaviors also has the added benefit of you doing the stretches yourself, which is also good for you. So modeling behaviors is a really good place to start from. Another is referring to expert sources, referring to somebody who can kind of walk you through the why. And if they come off as condescending, well, hey, they're not right there in front of you. You don't have to deal with the consequence of that. You know what? If it helps for your friend group to think I'm condescending, that's totally fine. Send them my way.
Hey, we can do an exchange of services. I'll talk down to your friends.
Perfect.
You talk down to mine. We'll call it even.
Everybody wins. And then, the other thing is kind of recognizing that, some people need to kind of hit, I guess, the equivalent of rock bottom when it comes to an injury before they're willing to do anything about it. But, also being able to talk about your own experiences with pain while you're gaming, making it clear that, I recognize this. This is a thing that's happening to me, and I know it's not supposed to happen, so I'm doing things about it. Kind of normalizing the idea of not being in pain from gaming is a really good approach as well. So modeling those good behaviors, referring to expert sources, and making sure that it's clear that you're doing these things for yourself too. It's not a do as I say, not as I do kind of situation.
Right. That's honestly such a brilliant answer, because you're right. I mean, everybody in the community benefits from this, from this process equally, right? We all have bodies. We all have to take care of them. And, so much of what you're talking about isn't just, raw healing. It's to use MMO terms, right? Guild Wars terms. It's damage prevention, We're stacking fat shields on ourselves. We're not, it isn't just raw healing after we take a bunch of damage. But yeah, so for our friends that are suffering, look, if you're stretching alongside of them, and if you're practicing good habits in front of them, just selfishly for yourself, because you don't want to get hurt eventually too, maybe you'll be a positive influence. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it also, it makes a person feel less out of place, that they're doing something extra or different because they need to, compensate for something they're doing wrong. And so it's just like, yeah, this is a thing we do. We stretch between games. We do exercises for warm-ups. We use heat when our muscles are tight. Normalizing those behaviors in your friend group and, you engaging them in them as well is never going to be a bad thing, either for, the general health and wellness of your friends or for your health and wellness.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, mind if I jump in real quick? Maybe I want to ask something specifically.
Go for it.
Thanks, big guy. I've been following you ever since. What was the first summit you appeared at? Was it Summit 3? Was it?
Yes. That was the first one I was at.
And that was like at the rise of the whole go to the doctor Mewtwo King meme. I don't know how much you heard about that, but like
we actually filmed a skit that never got aired. That was basically slow shots back and forth of Mewtwo King and I walking towards each other and introducing ourselves. I was really sad that didn't air. It was a great one.
Oh, that's amazing.
A whole bunch of pictures that like Tafo took behind the scenes of like just Mewtwo King being progressively closer in my proximity. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that particular meme, and I think my favorite iteration of it was the time somebody made him a personalized Mario Maker level that just said Mewtwo King to a doctor.
So I have to ask, out of curiosity, did he ever talk to you? Was he ever like, fine, what's up? My hand hurts, or were you never able to get through to him?
So there's two parts to that answer. Part number one is when it comes to specifics of have I ever treated a particular patient? That's not necessarily a thing I can answer. When it comes to have I ever actually talked to Mewtwo King and have we, ever casually talked about Smash? Yes. The answer to that is yes.
Okay.
So he has in fact talked to a doctor. I think we've completed the meme now.
Yes. But I've been ever since that day. I think kind of your humor and your I don't know. It seemed like you embraced the community in a way. Like you were like, because it was such a hot button issue. You had the Hacks box come out. You had the Mewtwo King hands hurting, and then you came. Kind of this knight in shining armor, like right in the peak of all the memedom. And here you were, and you had all this like legitimate. Because there was that one segment around Summit where you had this awesome, legitimate, like no nonsense presentation. Like, hey, here's some stuff that you can do, and it was really refreshing. I mean, Smash isn't exactly known for its professionalism. And you came on and it was like, oh, sweet, this is actually really useful. But I guess for people that haven't seen any of your stuff, and like, could you just real quick say like, hey, these are some really important things that you should practice right now if you're a gamer?
Sure thing. I can probably hit 5 of those all right, maybe not under a minute, but I can hit 5 of those pretty quickly. So thing number one is what you do outside of gaming, what affects what you do while you're gaming. And by that I mean, if you're doing exercises that improve your muscular endurance, especially, if you're a Smash player and you're using, a standard GameCube controller and you're doing something to work on forearm endurance, that's a really good place to start. Makes you much less likely to get an injury. Thing number two, paying attention to your posture. And I don't mean by that you need to have absolutely perfect, military precision on parade posture all the time. What that means is, things are generally in a neutral position. Your back is straight, not necessarily, perfectly upright, but it's straight leaning back or it's straight leaning forward. It's not slouched and slumped and rounded. That you're not, asking your arms to do double duty by both supporting your weight and acting as, a really mobile surface. So, if you need a stable base to have mobile extremities, mobile fingers, but it's much better to do that by leaning back and resting your arms on something than leaning forward and resting your whole body weight through your arms. And don't get me wrong, I do it too, especially like, I got to get closer to the screen. I need to see this. I need to be up close right now. But if you can spend more of your time leaned back a little bit and taking the pressure off your arms will thank you. In that same vein, making sure your setup supports you. If you're, sitting on a stool, you've got no option to lean back. You have to lean forward. If you're in a position where your arms have no opportunity to rest on anything, you're going to have to lean on them. That's absolutely going to, cause you some strain over time. So even if you were the most well-trained ballerina in the world, eventually your muscles would get tired of being in good posture. And that's the point at which it's really important to have a setup that supports you in good posture. So when your muscles need to relax, you're still in the right position to not get injured. Paying attention to your body, listening to what it's telling you, using, heat when it tells you I'm tight, using ice when it tells you I'm swollen, using break time when it tells you I'm tired. Listening in terms of getting to know kind of what your hungry signs are. So for some people, it isn't just the kind of gnawing feeling in your stomach. For some people, it's just starting to feel tired or drowsy or a little out of it. Recognizing that, that could be not just addressed with Monster or Red Bull. It's, maybe I need to eat something too. You can also do Monster or Red Bull. Don't get me wrong. Eat a little something too. Right. So those are kind of like the biggest and most important things. What you do outside of gaming matters. Your posture matters. Your setup matters. And then kind of how you use breaks and ice and heat modalities, we call them, for ice and heat specifically, and how you use stretches and exercises, to kind of build up your tolerance, to build up your ability to keep playing. Those are absolutely key. And if you're only going to do one stretch as a Smash player, the stretch I would suggest is for your forearm extensors. The way that you do it is you have your arm out in front of you, palm down, elbow extended, and you just use say you're stretching your right arm, you use your left hand to kind of push your hand down, so you're bending your wrist and having your fingers curled under and keeping that elbow straight. That'll stretch across the kind of the back of your elbow, the extensor wad. The first time you do it, don't push your hand too far. You might be surprised at how easy it is for it to start stretching if you haven't ever done this stretch.
I just tried it out myself.
wait. Will you clarify? When your elbow is locked, are your fingers pointed up to the sky or down to the ground?
Down to the ground.
My arm doesn't even do that.
It's palm facing down, elbow straight out. You might have to do what's called a pronation, which is turning your palm to face down. And your elbow doesn't have to be locked. It can be a little bit bent, and that's fine. The really important part is that you are passively bending your hand down and then your fingers under with your other hand. Because if you're actively using your flexor muscles to do it, they're doing work and your body isn't really relaxing quite so much.
Oh, Dr. Cait, I'm doomed. I need to start doing this. My arm doesn't bend this way. I'm glad there's no video.
Make sure to I'll link you a picture of it as well, because it might just be that it's a little hard to describe verbally.
Okay. We'll either way we'll put that in the show notes, or maybe I'm just thick in the skull and it's just me. But Abhi, you were saying?
Right. So you brought up these amazing tips, and I feel like one thing that ties all of this together is self-awareness. Now, one of the things that we encourage and talk about on the show is mindfulness a lot of the time. And this kind of does stretch over into, well, forgive me for the pun, but into like awareness about our bodies. And being self-aware is one of the most important things. And it's also one of the hardest things to teach. Obviously, you're a great example, because if from a while ago you sent out a tweet saying that you got poor sleep quality last night and that you're going to hydrate, meditate, get good fuel, and sleep early. Now, that's really cool. Like, you're able to diagnose that and give yourself a cool path forward. Now, how do you encourage, obviously I understand this is a very difficult question to answer, but how do you encourage people to be self-aware?
That is a good question. I think one of the easiest ways is setting a reminder for yourself. I swear I'm not trying to pun on Diablo 4, but we've all got phones now. But you set an alarm and you give yourself a time to check in with your body. It's not something that we do on a regular basis unless you're a high-level athlete who's kind of built that into your habits. You work in the medical profession and you're supposed to do this, although we don't always do it ourselves either. Or you set an alarm that reminds you, okay, now's the time to check in. Does anything hurt? Is anything tight? Is anything sore? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I tired? And if you are able to recognize that you're saying yes to any of those things, then the next step is knowing what to do to address it. And if you don't know what to do to address it, do you know where to look? And hopefully people know that they can look at our 1-hp.org website, especially for the do I hurt kind of questions. And I think the kind of mindfulness practices that I really like, I do that alarm method. I've also made a habit of I check in during kind of scheduled meal times. How hungry am I? Do I need this much? Do I need less? Do I really need to take some water first? Sometimes my sensation of hunger is me being thirsty and not recognizing it. And then I do a bit of mindfulness before I go to bed. Just like a brief 1 to 2 minute kind of review of systems, like a scan of myself, recognizing how I feel about the day, how I feel about myself, and how my body feels about everything. And then that gives me, a good base to build off of the following morning. If I'm about to go to bed and I do that body scan and I recognize, well, my wrist is really sore, I might pop my night splint on, which keeps my wrist in a neutral position overnight, gives me a little more rest. I might recognize, wow, my mouth is feeling really dry. I need to do better with hydration tomorrow. Let me make a quick note, and then I'll make a note for myself. Turning it into a habit is definitely the hard part, which is why I really recommend notes and alarms and, encouragement from friend groups. Having somebody you can be accountable to who is also accountable to you is like, hey, dude, how much water did you have today? Only 8 ounces? Drink another one.
It's like, man, if only like the rest of society practiced the same habits as frat boys. Like, imagine if I was just like, hey, Abhi, I bought a 6-pack of Dasani.
There you go. Oh God, when I was in college, my soccer team used to, on the Friday nights where we had a game on Saturday morning, we would play drinking games, so we just play them with Gatorade and water. It's a really good way to get hydrated. Actually, if anybody wants to try a fun way to get hydrated, I highly recommend Gatorade Pong.
Look, the only thing about Gatorade Pong is in real beer pong, I only get good a couple drinks in. I'm gonna be terrible at Gatorade Pong.
Maybe flip cup's more your style.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, back to Diablo. I mean, at least I think I have a theory that Blizzard was just trying to prevent injury. Like, look, we don't want gamers playing games anyway. Let's just give Diablo Immortal. It's for your own good. But to go back what you were talking about, like your nightly routine, self-reflection, talking about thinking about your own habits. That really kind of prompted me to think, what do you think the connection is between, like self-reflection and like physical self-care? I mean, you talked about your soccer player. Did you feel like there was any crossover in terms of like, hey, when you were playing, like, for instance, Gatorade Pong, or when you were really mindful about your body, did that help your mindset with the game too? Did it help your attitude towards the sport in any visible way?
Absolutely. I think actually one of the ways it helped most was I did a lot of my bad habits and mistake making in soccer. And by the time I got around to gaming, I, kind of had a little bit of, I'd learned the lessons the hard way. The lessons of what it feels like to not be hydrated enough, or what happens when I ignore certain kinds of pain in my body. And those are kinds of things that you really can only learn by experience sometimes. And that's okay. If the end result is you do learn the lesson and you change and improve afterwards, then it taught you something valuable. There was a utility to it. I think it also helped that from soccer, I learned a lot about the need to rely on your teammates and your greater community, even as your job is to also contribute to them. So there's a degree of self-efficacy. There's a degree of autonomy that's required of a soccer player, but there's also a degree of you need to be able to fit into this overall group. You need to be able to mesh together. And when I first started playing soccer, I used to, in addition to the team practices, wake up super duper early, grab a bag of soccer balls from the gym, and just go down to the field and practice really precise kicks and technical drills for like an hour in the morning. This did not make me a drastically better soccer player, because that wasn't really the thing I needed to work on. The thing I needed to work on was playing well within the team structure. So it may well be that the thing your game is lacking is not necessarily tech skill, but your mindset about it. It may be that, maybe it's you need to learn more strategy. Maybe it's you need to learn the matchup better. Maybe it's you need to, have a better mindset, the ability to relax and to let go. Maybe you need the ability to focus better. But it isn't always just about your skill in terms of your play style. It's about a whole host of other factors that we tend to ignore or write off because they aren't as readily fixable as grind tech skill for 50 bazillion hours and therefore get better at it. And even then, you're not actually going to get better at your tech skills or be able to implement them in any kind of meaningful way in a game if you're not reflecting on them, if you're not paying attention to, okay, why is this mistake happening? Why am I not landing this? What's the problem? And it's probably not just your controller. It might be. If it's not modified by like typo or something, it's probably not. It's probably the controller. You can totally blame it on that. But it's not just the kind of on-screen aspects of gaming that you need to address to get better. And so being able to recognize that is really helpful.
Sorry to cut you off there. Honestly, like I knew you'd have a lot of knowledge about physical therapy, injury prevention. I wasn't aware of just how like fierce of a competitor you are. Like I hope I never encounter you in Guild Wars 2.
Don't worry, I don't do much in the way of PvP content. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Also, don't worry if you ever encounter me in a Smash tournament because I'm terrible and I will 0-2.
If you ever see a warrior called Peon in Guild Wars 2, just please keep walking. Okay. What class do you play Guild Wars 2? I have to ask.
So I play a couple classes. For raid builds, I mainly run Druid because everybody always needs a Druid. My Druid is named Syad, which stands for Syndrome of Inappropriate Antidiuretic Hormone. All of my Guild Wars characters are named after medical conditions. I'm not kidding. I have a Necromancer, Power Reaper, who is named Nistemi, non-ST segment elevated myocardial infarction.
What is that?
I have a warrior. I have an elementalist weaver named Enamdari, anti-NMDA receptor encephalopathy.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
I have a guardian named Nidum, non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. One time I was running around as Nistemi, the heart attack one, and I encountered a cardiothoracic surgeon who recognized the name and got really excited, and then we just ran around in World v World together for a while.
He definitely made his day.
He probably like still thinks about that. That's probably like he probably took a screenshot that's like still his desktop background. He's like calling his mom, you'll never believe what happened today.
Side note, that Power Reaper was a thing that I waited for literally 3 years to become. All right, maybe not 3 years, but I waited for a really long time for it to finally be raid viable. And oh my god, I'm so happy that it finally.
I'm so okay. Sorry to steer us off course. Guild Wars 2 is so sick and no one plays it. So every time I encounter somebody else that's played it, I have to ask.
Totally understandable.
I have one. Well, I don't want to say final, in case AB has something, but I have a question that I've been thinking of, and you are from a sports background. I'm sure that when you were in a physical therapy school and on your way to becoming a doctor, you were around a lot of and again, this is just projection, so correct me if I'm wrong. I imagine you're around like a lot of like sports minded people. Is that true more or less?
Pretty accurate. There are definitely a lot of people with some amount of, sports or their own injury background going into people.
Right. So my question is, do people ever, when you tell people, I'm a physical therapist, injury prevention, and my niche is esports. Do people ever kind of like scoff at the thought, that like, esports, like it's such a sedentary hobby? Like why would anybody need that? Is that something that you have to battle or convince people of?
When it comes to PTs, I've actually never have had that be an issue. The response has always been, wow, that's really cool. I never thought about that. And I've definitely had it from other medical professions and, even from like, casual people who aren't in the medical field. But when it comes to PTs, I've never had any one of them respond with anything other than that's neat. And I don't know enough about it to do it myself, but oh my God, that sounds really cool and different,
Yeah.
which is, I think, a really great attitude that's cultivated in physical therapy. I think it also helps that there's so many ways that physical therapy can be done in a valuable and meaningful way. We do everything from treating a patient the day of their total joint replacement to helping them in a long-term nursing care facility to treating traumatic brain injuries in an acute rehab center to doing outpatient sports and ortho to doing vestibular and aquatic therapy and dry needling. And there's just so many different ways for PT to work and be valuable that it's not really all that odd to hear of a niche that you haven't practiced before yourself.
Right. That's super awesome. I think it's really cool, and it's obviously a very needed and required niche. Which brings me to, I guess, my last question, which I did have, Peon. Thank you. Which is, how do we encourage the subsidization of it? I think obviously from our conversation today and like from my thoughts previously, I understand that this is a very, very important need, and I know that there's teams and that there's gaming organizations that are sponsoring like physical therapists. But how do we like further encourage like and further like sponsor people like you to basically become a stalwart and a monolith in that, like an unmoving figure in our esports environments?
So I think there's two really important ways to do that. One of them is getting more PTs into esports, which is something that Matt and I have been working on, and we're really excited. We're actually going to be taking on 2 students who will be kind of helping to write for our website and kind of getting them more exposure to, what does the esports community need, which is, a really broad thing to ask, because the esports community composes console and PC and arcade and all kinds of different styles of games, all kinds of different devices games are played on. But even just getting an awareness of kind of what's under the umbrella header of esports and gaming is a helpful place to start. So step one is get more medical professionals into gaming. And then kind of along with that, making sure that we're encouraging the answer to injuries not to be rest or stop gaming, which I think kind of has given a lot of gamers a justified mistrust of the medical field. Going to their doctor, my hand hurts when I play video games. Okay, well, don't play video games. That's not a helpful response.
Right.
So that's one part of it, getting more people in. The other part of it is having prominent people in the community kind of signal boosting what PTs are doing, having community groups have a physical therapist do a Skype call with them, if they have like a weekly, inviting a physical therapist out to be on site, to be someone that they ask questions of. A method that's worked really well for Matt and I when it's come to traveling to someplace that might be a little farther away that we might need a little bit of help financially doing kind of like a compendium model where, all right, we hit this amount of money and we can have a physical therapist on site for the day or for, 2 4-hour periods, 2 days in a row or something like that. I think there's a lot of ways to incorporate it into existing tournament structure. But I do recognize that we do work within pretty tight budget windows. So it's really great that Matt and I have had a chance to work with so many tournaments, and the fact that they've been able to find kind of a balance to what fits within their budget, what gives value to the community, and then what gives value to us, which, for Genesis, for example, which was both a payment because we were doing work, but also, because in order to fit into their budget structure, we were like, okay, so we're going to knock this amount off of what we would charge, but, can you give us some ad time? So we ran stretching ads on the Twitch stream during Genesis, which, also, drove traffic to our site, which meant more people were seeing our guides and our infographics and our, all of our injury prevention routines.
Right.
Which then is more people who are talking about it and engaging in it, which is, again, normalizing those behaviors for the community. So I think the two parts of it are bring in more PTs, and the other part of it is signal boosting and incorporation from the greater community.
Wow. Well, that makes a lot of sense. That was a very thorough and perfect answer.
Might have thought about this one a little bit.
Definitely.
But Cait, we really appreciate having you on. I don't think Abhi and I have anything more for you. Would you tell people where to find you?
Sure. I can be found on Twitter at Cait McGee PT, CaitMcGeePT. You can also check out all of our resources. If you go on YouTube and search for the channel One Health Providence, or if you go to our website directly, which is one-hp.org. That's where you can find all of my work, as well as my partner, Matt. He's at HP for Gamers on Twitter as well. You should definitely follow him if you aren't already. And that's where you can find all of our stuff to help you play more and hurt less.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I definitely, guys, can't recommend all of their stuff enough. I mean, you got a lot of some bombshells from Dr. Cait today, but the thing is she has published so many resources. She's a real encyclopedia for everything that you could need, for life when it comes to this kind of stuff. So please go give her a follow, go look through her stuff and use it to your benefit. Dr. Cait, really appreciate having you on. And before you go, I should tell you, you have made it to our website's Hall of Fame. Along with our other guests. Yeah. It's right next to Barack Obama.
I think this is my first ever Hall of Fame. Thanks, guys.
And certainly not your last. But yeah, you're square in the middle between Barack Obama and Harrison Ford. They were our two previous guests, so you're in some good company. But really, thank you so much, Dr. Cait.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great to chat with you.
Welcome back to Beyond the Metagame. Abhi, that was quite an interview, man. Dr. Cait is so intelligent, and she has so much to say on the topic of injury prevention and physical therapy. And it was just so cool to get her perspective on all this. It's like a side of the game that's so important, but never really talked about in the public space, man. So, how are you feeling? How are you debriefing?
I think I'm just really excited by the fact that we're gonna reach out to a lot of people and get a lot of good content. Got a lot of good content out there. Not only her guides and her articles on the 1HP website, but also a lot of her viewpoints and a lot of really cool instructional things that we can all implement into our communities, into our best practices while just kind of playing the game. And while just hanging out with our friends. I think a lot of the stuff about building good habits in the community and building good self-awareness vibes very, very easily with me, as it's definitely a huge part of my daily routine as well.
Dude, I need to be more like you two. I mean, the way she was talking about herself, I didn't sleep that well. I need to drink more water. I need to sleep. I'm like, man, she just has everything together. I need to incorporate some of that in my own life. And there are the times where I'm tired and I'm like, man, I'm tired, but coffee exists. I'll be fine. Whatever. But yeah, I know it was really, really cool to hear all that from even if I was the one loser amongst two professionals. That's okay. I'm content.
I would hardly call myself a professional. I just enjoy. I'm a hobbyist at taking care of myself.
leave the pro status up to Dr. Cait. But
Right.
guys, I cannot stress enough. I mean, I say this all the time, but please, please, please look at her stuff, and please tweet out at her and say, hey, like, we really appreciate you on the Beyond the Metagame podcast. I mean, let her know that she is appreciated, because maybe still coasting off the highs from Thanksgiving last week, but yeah, let her know that you enjoyed it if you did. But AV, that leads me to our next segment. We don't ever really shout out our YouTube listeners. A chunk of our audience, not a huge chunk, but a chunk, listens to us solely on YouTube, and we never really give them any love. When they make comments, we don't really I mean, we respond sometimes, but it isn't our primary platform, right? So maybe they kind of get put on the back burner sometimes, but we wanted to show some love to them and answer a question from KD Jonas, who asked some questions in our YouTube comments.
Yeah, definitely. I think I want to ask you, because I'm really interested on your viewpoint on this. I want to ask you, what does it mean to be the best in the world, and what are the benefits and downsides that come with it? Also, is it really worth it? That's a great question by Katie Jonas. What do you think, Peon?
Yeah, so what does it mean to be the best in the world? That part of it, I don't really understand what he's asking. We do have the PGR, right? So I guess the number one player is the best in the world. But I guess beyond that, right? Like what does it mean to hold that mantle? I think it means that you're going to face a lot of criticism. There's the phrase, it's lonely at the top, right? Think Hungrybox, think Zero during his reign. Think even like Ninja on Twitch, or Dr. Disrespect when he was the king of Twitch. These figures that become the face of whatever activity they participate in are under the microscope, and you're going to be rooted against. Even if you're a really cool guy, people will always poke at you, because it's really easy to punch up psychologically. Like, people really frown down, like, if a top player was like, man, this 0-2er is a real jerk, I hate this guy, he's so full of himself. If Hungrybox said that about some random guy at a local, he'd be demonized. But many people at locals can talk about Hungrybox and say what a bad guy he is, because you can punch up in our society. It's just kind of something we accept. So it's not easy to be at the top, even outside of the game. Is it worth it? I think that if you ask any top player if it's worth it, they'll say yes, at least for them. That's something you have to evaluate for yourself. But for them, the adversity is worth the success. I heard an expression targeted towards gamers where it's like, if I learned one thing from games, it means, like, if I'm encountering enemies, it means I'm going the right direction, and so adversity is just comes with the territory when it comes to, like, accomplishing your goals and to being a public figure. So I think it's worth it. What do you is that good? Is that good, Avi? Did I cover everything?
Yeah, I think that covered about everything. I think that you probably have a lot of experience with this, being kind of the number one ranked player in your region for the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, but that's a whole different
Right,
level.
right. But it still exists. Like, obviously, being number one in your region is very different between between being number one in the PGR.
Yeah,
but there are some similarities that you can draw from it.
Sure, I mean that goes for everybody that's like the favorite in a matchup, right? People always root for the underdog, So yeah, even if you're the number one player in your region, let alone the world, it comes with downsides. And yeah, I guess in my own little microcosm, just myself, it's so different than being. I'm so I don't want to even compare myself to Hungrybox or Zero, right? Because it's a completely different level. But yeah, sure. I mean, even my own scaled down success does come with downsides and positives, but the positives always outweigh the downsides, in my opinion. AV, another aspect or another question that Katie Jonas asked was, is it feasible to become a top player while being good at other things? So maybe I'll condense it down. Do you think it's feasible to become a member of the PGR in Smash Ultimate if you're like a jack of all trades, if you have other hobbies and stuff like that?
Oh, it depends on how you define it. This is a definition problem. Like most questions, it's a definition issue. What does being good at other things mean? Does it mean you want to be on the PGR while also being a master ranked chess player? Does it mean that you want to learn how to cook creme brulee? Like, does it mean that you want to like have like be good at a certain hobby? In that case, yes, I think most top players need to have some sort of, obviously Smash is going to be a huge part of their life, but in order to be good at the game, you have to have some semblance of balance. So there are top players, like you can see that Void is a fairly good League of Legends player. Like it's not and a Osu player, or Os as it's actually pronounced. I think that it's actually pretty common to be good at multiple things, especially if you're at the top, because some of these skills do cross over. Whether it's possible to be like the best at two things, I mean, I just default to saying no, because that's the statistically correct answer. Obviously, there will be exceptions to that rule, but the answer is no. Like, what the people who are at the top are in like such a small percentage of the population, like the 0.001%, even maybe even one more zero than that, and those people only come there by having a pretty crazy dedication to the game, regardless of whether it was for 2 years or 10 years. Like whether you're a Zane or whether you're a Zero who played from a while back, going into the Brawl and the Melee days. Yet you're going to always like have this dedication to one game. And if you switch, I don't really see you being like a PGR in a PGR quote unquote in two different things.
All right. Well, that has it for this week's question block. Thank you so much, Katie Jonas, for leaving us the YouTube comment. We're looking. All right, we're looking. We love it. We love you guys on the YouTube side of things too. Abhi, that brings us to the conclusion of our show. But actually, I spoke too soon. I want to do a quick shout out to a lot of our listeners. A lot of our community. I want to talk about another podcast out there. It's called the Smash Bros Cast, hosted by N64 Josh and Nightcrawler. And these two guys, they're kind of more casually minded. They're not competitive players yet, but they're lifelong Nintendo fans getting into the competitive scene. And they make a really good podcast for just chilling back, talking about Smash news, talking about their experience with the game. They're charismatic, and if you like Smash podcasts, give them a look. A lot of their listeners have joined our community as of late. And so everybody from that neck of the woods, I want to welcome you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to N64 Josh for shouting us out on his podcast. And it's awesome, man. It's great to see like two different communities intertwine and learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy their podcast, and I think they bring a very, very unique voice to a very barren ecosystem because there's not many podcasts or content that people can consume. And I think that we're all doing a kind of a great service to the community with providing resources and just cool things to listen to for people that love and are dedicated to this game.
Absolutely, man. Well, that does bring us to this week's conclusion. Abhi, it's been a pleasure, man. We had a little bit more than a week left till Ultimate comes out. We'll hold it tight in the meantime. Where can people find you, my friend?
People can find me same place as usual. Abhi Vaidyanatha. That's A plus my really long Indian last name. And you can find that on our website as well. And our Twitter, which is at Beyond Metagame.
Woo! And you can find me at Peon_GCE. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.